how will you define a database? Database is a structured collection of information where all the data can be collected, updated, or modified, organized in a database. How will you define a traditional database with your distributed databases? Traditional database is stored in a centralized location where all the data can be kept inside. It is very simple and easy to maintain. But in the case of large databases, it is very difficult to handle the traditional databases. That is why we have introduced the distributed database. Distributed databases can be defined as where all the data can be stored in a multiple location via a network through your data can be retrieved. So this is the basic difference between the traditional databases and your distributed databases. It comes under the categories of 5 factors. First one is your data location, and second is your data reliability, third is your performance, and fourth is your complexity. This is how the traditional databases differs from the distributed databases. In traditional databases, the data can be stored in a single location where you can retrieve the data. But in the case of distributed databases, it will store across the multiple locations where the users can access the data by the means of local connections. Second is your performance. When it comes to the performance, the traditional databases will not be as much as the distributed databases. Why? Because if any node fails in the central location, your entire database will be goes down. But in the case of distributed databases, even one node fails, the another node carry out the remaining operations. That comes under the performance metrics. When it comes to the complexity in traditional databases, it is very simple. You can easily manage and you can maintain the traditional databases. But it comes to the distributed databases, we have to maintain the reliability and consistency of the data. It is very complex to maintain the distributed databases. What is your scalability? How you will scalable with the traditional database and distributed databases. In traditional databases, scalability is not that much good. When you are comparing the performance with the distributed databases, how it differs? Scalable, it means the measurement. How will you measure the data? How will you upgrade the data? It will be upgraded vertically in the traditional databases. Say for example, you can say your CPU or memory. But in the case of distributed databases, data can be maintained. So these are the major differences between the traditional databases and distributed databases. If you are making any comparison with the traditional and distributed, it is much more, you can go for the distributed databases and you can work out your database when it comes to the large data sets.